Imagine this, friends, a cold courtroom in a small American city where justice often feels like a machine, grinding through cases with little regard for the human stories behind them. An elderly man, weathered by time and hardship, stands in handcuffs, accused of crimes born of survival. But when his name echoes through the room, Mason Quinn, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, the air shifts, and a judge's quiet gasp unveils a truth that stops time. This is no ordinary trial. It's a reckoning of honor, sacrifice, and a debt unpaid for decades. I'm your storyteller, with 20 years weaving tales that clutch the heart. And today, I'm asking you to step into this moment. When have you seen someone's past rewrite their present? Hold that thought, because the story of Mason Quinn and Judge Olivia Parker will leave you breathless. Share your reactions later. What would you feel standing in that courtroom? The fluorescent lights of courtroom 3B buzzed harshly, casting stark shadows on the worn linoleum floor. Mason Quinn, 69, shuffled to the defendant's bench, his faded military jacket hanging loose on a frame thinned by years of struggle. His face, etched with lines from Vietnam and Iraq, bore the weight of battles fought and forgotten. Once, he'd stood tall in marine dress blues, medals gleaming. Now, he wore shelter hand-me-downs, his shoulders slumped under the gaze of a room that saw only a vagrant. The clerk's voice cut through the murmurs. Name. Mason's reply was soft, trembling but proud. Mason Quinn, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. No one could have predicted the wave that followed, as a judge's discovery turned a routine hearing into a moment of profound redemption. The bailiff called the case, Docket 47B, City versus Mason Quinn. Disturbance of peace, trespassing, resisting arrest. Mason stood, his arthritis-stiffened joints protesting. As the prosecutor, a young man in a crisp suit, laid out the charges, Mr. Quinn has been warned multiple times about loitering behind the Jefferson Street Cafe. The owner filed 3 complaints this month. Unmentioned was the truth. Mason had only sought warmth by the cafe's dumpster vent on freezing nights, never begging, never disturbing. Officer James Reynolds testified, found him at 11:45 p.m. refusing to leave. Mason hadn't refused. He'd asked for a moment to finish a half sandwich gifted by the cook, Jimmy, whose father he'd known in Desert Storm. But silence seemed easier than explanation. Judge Olivia Parker, 52, presided with the steady hand of 2 decades on the bench. Her half-moon glasses perched low as she addressed Mason. Do you have representation? Mr. Quinn. He shook his head. His public defender was tied up elsewhere. Would you like to make a statement? Mason's voice, rusty from disuse, carried a flicker of pride. No excuses. Your Honor. Just trying to stay warm. Olivia's eyes narrowed, something stirring in her expression. Why that location? Mason hesitated. Jimmy, the cook, leaves food sometimes. Known him since he was a kid. His dad served with me. Olivia pressed, her tone probing. And your military service? Mason straightened slightly, muscle memory kicking in. Marine Corps, 1975 to 1995. Staff Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, Iraq. The judge scribbled a note, her gaze lingering on Mason's file. Before she could speak, the courtroom doors swung open. A man in a tailored suit strode in, his presence commanding. Alexander Rossi, for the defendant, he announced, setting a leather briefcase down. Mason blinked, confused. He couldn't afford a lawyer, let alone one like this. This is irregular, Mr. Rossi, Olivia said, her voice sharp. The court wasn't informed. Rossi's reply was smooth. A recent development, Your Honor. I request a recess to confer with my client. Olivia studied Mason, then nodded. 15 minutes. In the recess, Mason turned to Rossi. I don't have money for you. Rossi's smile was kind. You don't need any. Williams, Rossi, and Parker is handling this pro bono. Mason frowned at the name Parker. But before he could ask, Rossi was reviewing his case. In her chambers, Olivia removed her glasses, her hands trembling. She pulled a worn photo from her desk, her younger self beside her brother, Lieutenant Jack Parker, in his Marine uniform, smiling at his commissioning. Next to it lay Jack's last letter from Iraq, its edges frayed. Staff Sergeant Quinn saved us in Fallujah. He'd written, ran through fire to pull me out, then held the line so we could evac. He's the best of us. 2 weeks later, Jack died in an IED blast. At his funeral, a Marine had approached Olivia's family. I'm the one Quinn saved with your son. He's a hero. His name was Mason Quinn. Olivia had searched for him, but the Corps said he'd redeployed, then discharged with PTSD and a brain injury. Now, fate had brought him to her courtroom. Homeless and unrecognized, Rossi entered her chambers, concern in his eyes. Olivia, what's happening? As her late husband's law partner, he knew her history. She gestured to the photo. It's him? Alex, the Marine who saved Jack. Rossi's eyes widened. The homeless vet in there is that? Mason Quinn. She nodded. His file confirms it. Fallujah, 2004. Silver Star. How did a hero end up like this? Rossi sighed. PTSD. Bureaucracy. Job loss. The streets. The system failed him. Olivia's voice hardened. I'm not letting him slip away again. Rossi raised an eyebrow. Ethically, you could recuse. She shook her head. Ethically, we owe him. Back in court. Olivia's composure was ironclad, but her hands trembled slightly. Mr. Rossi, how does your client proceed? Rossi stood. We request dismissal. Your Honor, Mr. Quinn sought shelter from freezing conditions. With implied permission from cafe staff, the prosecutor began to object, but Olivia silenced him with a gesture. I have questions for the defendant. Mr. Quinn, your record shows service in Fallujah, 2004. Correct. Mason nodded. Yes, ma'am. 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, on April 17, 2004. Did you rescue Lieutenant Jack Parker under enemy fire? Mason's eyes clouded, memories surfacing. Yes, good officer. Hit, trying to save a corpsman. I pulled him to cover. He told me to leave him, but I couldn't. A silver-haired man in a Marine Corps League jacket stood in the gallery, his voice booming. That's him. Staff Sergeant Quinn saved 6 of us that day. Olivia's gavel struck once. Order. But the room buzzed with tension. What happened to Lieutenant Parker? She asked, her voice steady despite the storm within. Mason's voice broke. Got him to medevac. Heard he reached Germany. Weeks later, his vehicle hit an IED. Always wondered if I did more harm than good. Saving him just to lose him. The silver-haired Marine, defiant, spoke again. Quinn took 2 bullets, getting the lieutenant out. Olivia nodded, then announced, 10-minute recess. Mr. Quinn, remain here, in her chambers. She called Colonel James Matthews, her brother's old CO. I need you here. Now, when court resumed, 3 uniformed Marines entered, a colonel, a master sergeant, and a corporal with a wooden case. Mason stood instinctively, his posture snapping to attention. Olivia removed her glasses, her voice human, not judicial. I must disclose a personal connection. Lieutenant Jack Parker was my brother. The courtroom gasped. Mason's eyes widened. 20 years ago, Olivia continued. Jack wrote of a Staff Sergeant Quinn who saved him in Fallujah, running through fire to carry him to safety. That was you? Mason Quinn. The silver-haired Marine shouted. It's true. Quinn saved us all. Olivia's gaze held Mason's. I tried to find you after Jack's death, but you were gone. Now, fate brings you here. She nodded to Colonel Matthews, who stepped forward. Staff Sergeant Quinn, the Marine Corps has sought you for years. New intelligence confirms your actions in Fallujah saved not just Lieutenant Parker, but disrupted an ambush, saving the convoy. Your silver stars upgraded to the Navy Cross. The corporal opened the case, revealing a medal on a blue ribbon. Matthews pinned it to Mason's jacket, reading, for conspicuous gallantry, April 17, 2004. The gallery erupted in murmurs. The silver-haired Marine called, Attention on deck. Veterans stood, saluting, followed by the entire courtroom. Even the prosecutor, Olivia, tears streaming, declared, all charges against Mason Quinn are dismissed with prejudice. Her gavel struck, and the room exhaled. The master sergeant approached with a tablet. Sir, your VA benefits are reassessed. 100% disability, retroactive, with back pay, medical, housing. Rossi added, "Our firm will ensure it's processed." Jimmy, the cook, rushed forward, tears in his eyes. "My dad said a Mason Quinn saved his unit. I never knew it was you." The prosecutor, humbled, apologized. "I had no idea, sir." Olivia descended from the bench, standing before Mason. "Jack wrote, you said, 'No Marine left behind while I'm breathing.' Today, we honor that for you." But friends, this courtroom scene is just the beginning. The ripple of that moment stretched far beyond those walls, touching lives, rewriting futures, and proving that honor never fades. Let's pause. Imagine you're in that gallery, watching the courtroom rise. What's stirring in you? Pride for Mason, anger at his neglect, or hope that justice can prevail? Drop your thoughts below, because this story's power lies in what it awakens in us. And think, when have you seen someone's truth finally recognized? We'll circle back. 2 weeks later, Mason stood in a one-bedroom apartment, a VA housing program miracle. His Navy cross hung framed beside his Purple Hearts. Recovered by Rossi from a lost storage unit, a knock came. Olivia, out of robes, holding a box. "Just Mason, please," he said, ushering her in. "Then I'm Olivia," she replied, smiling. She handed him letters from Jack, one describing Mason's heroism. "He said you were the Marine he wanted to be," she said. Mason's hands shook, reading Jack's words. "Quinn's the kind who'd give everything for his men." Olivia shared Jack's final mission, volunteering to protect civilians. Inspired by Mason's example, "He didn't die because of you," she said. "He lived like you." Mason's guilt, carried for decades, began to lift. "All these years, I thought no one remembered," he whispered. Olivia touched his shoulder. "We remembered. Mason, Jack, me, your Marines." Outside, snow fell, blanketing the city in quiet renewal. As she left, Olivia said, "Jack wrote that a Marine's measure is what they do when no one's watching. You lived that, even on the streets." The story spread. A local news segment, "Hero Recognized," went viral. Millions moved by Mason's journey. The Jefferson Street Cafe renamed its dumpster alley Quinn's Corner. Jimmy serving free meals to veterans. The silver-haired Marine, Frank Delgado, organized a Marine Corps League fundraiser, raising $50,000 for homeless vets. Mason, as guest of honor. He spoke, voice steady. "I thought I was forgotten. You all proved me wrong." The crowd stood again, applause echoing. Olivia's Veterans Court program expanded, funded by a national grant, inspired by Mason's case. She trained judges nationwide, ensuring no veteran slipped through cracks. Mason volunteered there, mentoring others. His apartment now a home with photos of Jack and his old unit. Frank visited, sharing Fallujah stories. Their bond a lifeline. "You saved me twice, Quinn," he said, clapping Mason's back. Beyond the city, the story touched hearts. In Seattle, a teacher used Mason's tale to teach empathy, her students starting a coat drive for shelters. In Atlanta, a VA worker, moved by the viral clip, streamlined benefits for 200 veterans. In Tokyo, a Marine veteran, Hiroshi, saw the story and reconnected with his daughter, vowing to live with Mason's honor. Social media buzzed with "No Marine Left Behind," a movement for veteran support. Petitions gaining thousands of signatures. Mason's life bloomed. He took college classes, studying history, his VA benefits covering tuition. At a Memorial Day event, he met Clara, a widow whose husband served in Vietnam. Their coffee dates grew into love, her laughter healing old wounds. "You're still saving people." "Mason," she said, holding his hand. He smiled. The Navy Cross on his wall, a reminder of who he'd always been. The courtroom moment became legend. A PBS documentary, Honor Restored, chronicling Mason's impact. Judges cited it in training, a lesson in seeing the human behind the case. The city erected a plaque at the courthouse for Mason Quinn, whose service reminds us all to leave no one behind. Olivia, retiring years later, kept Jack's letter and Mason's photo on her desk, her legacy tied to theirs. Now, friends, let's talk. You've walked with Mason and Olivia, felt the weight of forgotten honor, the lift of recognition. What hit you hardest? The courtroom standing as one, Mason's quiet guilt dissolving, or Olivia's vow to never let him slip away. Share below. Where are you watching? And what's your takeaway? And here's a challenge. When has someone's hidden story changed how you saw them? Post it, because your voice adds to this legacy. This isn't just a trial. It's a mirror to our duty to those who serve. Mason's stand in Fallujah and his survival on the streets show honor endures. Olivia's justice proves recognition can heal. Share this with someone who needs it. A veteran, a friend, a kid learning what sacrifice means. Let's keep no Marine left behind alive, because every act of remembrance builds a world where no hero is forgotten. Subscribe, hit the bell, and tell us, what's your story of honor?